Rogue is the newest entry in the newest season of Doctor Who, and it is most definitely a return to form in many ways, but at the same time introduces many new things, and so I kind of want to talk about that in this video. So let's just get straight into breaking down this episode. So as soon as you start watching the episode, you instantly get the vibes of an old Doctor Who episode, where you just have a cold open that introduces you to the villain, and as we learn later on, these villains are just one of those not so serious weird villains. For the episode it works, much like it did in those older episodes, but just that feeling of this episode, I don't think we've had this whole season. I know people say Space Babies was like that, and I wouldn't even say Space Babies are like that personally. It just had a different format. But this just felt like an episode from Series 2 or Series 3. Early into the episode, we are introduced to the character Rogue, which obviously is the title of the episode, and you can very quickly tell he is interested in the Doctor and the Doctor is interested in him. The Doctor messing with Rogue throughout the first like 5-10 minutes is so fun. Normally you'd be expecting the Doctor to be a little more worried with a gun pointed at him, and the Doctor being forced inside a transport beacon that will just kill him, yet he's still having a laugh and joke messing around. And I just feel like it's one of those where the Doctor clearly knows the type of character he's dealing with, and he's just having a bit of fun with it. He knows he can have a bit of fun with it, and it is just fun to watch, because for the most part, those first 10 minutes of Rogue, he is dead serious and like doesn't even crack a smile. And yeah, the Doctor's having the time of his life, just fooling around. While we're on the topic of Rogue, I've seen a lot of praise for him. For me, I kind of felt throughout that his character was a little off, and that's not the actor's fault. I just feel like certain external moments also don't help, and by that I mean the Doctor really likes this guy, yet he's a bounty hunter that kills things and doesn't care what he's killing, he just wants the money. I feel like any other Doctor would not be that into this guy. Despite whether you think the Doctor would be interested in people romantically, because that's a whole different conversation, I just can't see them even wanting to get close to this person, because we've seen the Doctor punish and kill people like this before, and yet the Doctor in this cannot get enough of Rogue. The reasons behind me thinking Rogue's character is off as well, internally, is because I feel like his character changes quite drastically within this 40-minute episode. Because at the start, he's very serious and closed off and not really looking for anything more than the life he currently has. And yet at the end, he sacrifices himself for the Doctor, who he's barely known for like 30 minutes at this point. And yes, it could be more. It might not be the exact episode runtime, but the episode felt like there wasn't many time jumps. And so it felt very quick. I know we have the line where he's like, yeah, come look for me. And we're probably going to get a payoff for that in season 2. But that is a lot of faith he's put in the Doctor there. And I feel like I wouldn't personally have that much trust in someone within just 30 minutes of knowing them. Now, in these early scenes with the Doctor and Rogue, we also have a scene much like we've seen in the 11th hour, or the Day of the Doctor. We get to see every face the Doctor has had as it is shown to Rogue to prove to him that he is not a shapeshifter, but a Time Lord instead. And we actually have a face appear that isn't technically a face we've seen before in the show. And I didn't notice at first. I assumed this was just a face of one of the Timeless Children Doctors initially. And it was a bit weird that it was included, but I was like, that's probably what it is. And no, it's the face of Richard E. Grant from a story that released in 2003, prior to Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor, and was instead a different Ninth Doctor in an animated serial called Scream of the Shulker. Now, I have not seen this, I don't know much about it, but by the sounds of it, this could be Russell T Davies trying to just canonize this because of the Timeless Children, and that could be quite cool. I love those scenes when we get to see all the Doctors' faces, because you know those Doctors so well, and you love seeing them reappear, even if it's for a brief moment. And I feel like not everybody knows who that is, and so whilst I don't inherently dislike it, I don't actively like it. It was just one of those moments where I was like, who is that? But I'm sure anyone who has seen that and has been a fan of the show since before 2005, you will probably have loved seeing that inclusion. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Doctor's interest in romance, and I'm sure it's kind of going to be the big talking point from this episode, but I'm kind of in the middle on it, because when I was first watching this, I was just so confused, purely because it's never really been a thing before. We've never seen a Doctor pursuing a relationship, at least not on camera. I guess you could maybe argue David Tennant. For every other Doctor, like, I can't imagine any other Doctor doing this episode. I don't think it would have worked, because our characters don't feel like that's what they want. And so that was kind of like my main reasons for not liking it, because I was just like thinking it's so out of character for the Doctor, really. But after thinking about it, I actually feel like it is in character for Ncuti's Doctor. If you look at the season we've had, he's the most emotional and like heartfelt Doctor. He, to me, is the Doctor who loves love and hates hate. He's like the purest of all of those things. He gets so upset at things that are sad, and we do see the Doctor cry in other seasons, but few and far between. So with Shooties, it's every emotion he feels, you see it. It is front and center, and I feel like that's the same with this. You know, you have those moments with other Doctors where it seems like they're into someone and they never go further with that. And I'm feeling like that might just be what Shootie's take is. He has almost got the confidence and outwardness of Captain Jack, but with the rest of the Doctor's personality. And so I can buy this. Honestly, another part, we keep getting references of Shooty being a dad. Not just a granddad because he had Susan, just a dad. We've had mentions of him being a parent. So at some point, he would have had to have a relationship. I mean, it would have been a while back and, you know, William Hartnell or before with the Timeless Child. But that would have happened, which means it's not completely off the table. It's just something we're not used to. And I think it can work, especially with the direction this Doctor feels like they're heading in. I still feel like I prefer the Doctor just only having a relationship with a companion as they're just best friends, but if they properly go into this and Rogue comes back in seasons later and it's actually a thing they pursue, I can almost guarantee the finales we're going to get and some of the episodes we're going to get. Now, with that out of the way, the villains, got to talk about them. I actually love them. I think they're great, purely because they are so unserious. This episode was purely focused on the Doctor and Rogue, and so they kind of took a back seat, but I don't hate that because they were never really the biggest threat. Like, they get defeated so easily at the end, but I don't know. I just kind of loved how cheesy they were. Like, the look of them looked brilliant, but they did look a bit goofy. Like the blue one with the whiskers, I don't even know what that was, but that was fun. Them literally referencing themselves cosplaying too, and just some of the dialogue they come up with was just really funny to me.
And what could be better than a wedding?
Overall, I just feel like they perfectly suited what the episode needed. It just felt like a classic Doctor Who villain. This isn't me saying this in a negative way, but it almost gave off Absorbaloff level of like cringe and weird. But I love that. I don't hate Love and Monsters, so there's no shade there. Now, at the end, we obviously have an emotional segment where the Doctor thinks that Ruby has been killed by one of these things, and you truly felt his sadness, like I stated earlier. He just shows it all. And honestly, the part at the end where he says he couldn't let Ruby go, it's so reminiscent of the Doctor and Clara from season 9, which for me is one of my favorite seasons. I know, controversial opinion, but that whole dynamic, it's not as extreme here necessarily, but it feels like that. And whilst I don't feel like that relationship is believable to be that level currently, I do kind of like how the Doctor's just admitting that he already doesn't want that to happen to Ruby. He's already at that stage for him that he couldn't just let her die like that. He'd rather let these creatures out than let that happen to her. Now, I hate ending the video on a negative point, but I feel like the resolution of the story was pretty weak. With the trap that they used to get rid of these creatures, I really disliked how he just used the sonic and magically it has a bigger capacity and he can just choose. And then I just hate those lines that are like, yeah, we've got one use. It's like adding stakes in one line because there's no better way of doing it. I feel like a better way of doing the story, you could have had it where they had to pick them off one by one. Like, it can only take one person at a time, and so they had to try and get them isolated and pick one off at a time. And I feel like that could have worked better. Now, with that said, I did enjoy this episode. It's not my favorite episode of the show. It's not my least favorite episode of the show. And honestly, I give it a rating of a solid 7. And a 7 out of 10 for me is like your pretty good episodes. So it's a solid entry for this new season. Make sure to drop some comments down below, letting me know what you think of this episode. I'd be interested to see what you think. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.